Yo, dude, Doomslayer be getting the endgame treatment? Oh shit! Yo, what's up, pals? So you guessed it, we're back with our favorite game of 2020, Doom Eternal. So I thought we could have a discussion about the latest DLC to come out, The Ancient Gods Part 2. You could take this as a review if you would like, but really I just wanted to talk about the DLC in general and go over what I like and what I didn't particularly care for. So let's get into it. Now, just in case you haven't played Part 2 yet, here's your official spoiler warning. Now, if you haven't guessed by now, the story had some serious Avengers Endgame vibes. I mean, just look at this clip and tell me you don't spot the similarities. Now, to me, I don't much care for the story in this game, it's more about the mechanics and the gameplay, but there were some striking similarities. Take the stakes, for example. If you win, all demons outside of Hell are destroyed, and if you lose, the universe is doomed. Pun intended. You can't tell me that this isn't reminiscent of the Avengers fighting Thanos in Endgame. And don't get me wrong, I'm not dogging it. In fact, I felt it was well done and a decent conclusion to the saga. I quite liked it, actually. But you and I both know we're not here to talk about the story in a Doom game, are we? Obviously, as this is just DLC, the core mechanics are still key to your gameplay. But the devs at id like to throw new pieces into the fray to test your ability to adapt on the fly and overcome new obstacles. So let's start with the demonic troopers. And I don't have much to say about them. I never really felt threatened by their presence, and they just kind of appeared out of nowhere. No special tricks or anything, they just popped up like they've been there the whole time. I was hoping that by Amora, any new enemies that would be introduced would provide a challenge, but these guys were just kind of chumps. Now, the Riot Soldier was interesting, and not that I needed a reason to use the remote detonation mod, but I'm glad that we have a good one now. I didn't find these guys to be too much of a problem unless I was in a pinch, and I really like when I'm forced to switch mods and weapons to deal with different threats, so it's certainly a welcome addition. Though, I gotta say, I kind of wanted more of a traditional chain gunner, like long range hit scanners that can mow you down if you don't prioritize them. I think that would have been neat, but I'll make do with what we got. The Screecher was another interesting addition. You almost didn't want to kill them, or if you did, it was somewhat of a regretful decision. They certainly added to the challenge with that double Marauder arena on Imora, and the additional challenge and pressure was almost terrifying the first time I ran into to them, so I really liked that aspect to them. Now, the Cursed Prowler is a bit of a mixed bag, so let's just start with the mechanics involved here. You get hit by the Cursed Prowler and you lose your dash and slowly lose health. And personally, I think this is a great idea. It limits your mobility while you hunt down a naturally evasive demon, and all the while, you are slowly dying. But what I'm not a fan about, though, is the Blood Punch requirement. And don't get me wrong, I like when the game introduces an enemy that requires a specific tool. It's kind of like putting the pieces of a puzzle together, right? But what I was hoping for were enemies that forced the use of other weapon mods like the Destroyer Blade. Though, I guess if that were the case for the Cursed Prowler, I could see how the Blood Punch would be a better option. Um, Another issue was that its behavior was too similar to regular Prowlers, which makes sense. It's like a variant, and he is colored differently. But there is a lot of visual noise in this game, so discerning between the Cursed Prowler and a normal Prowler can be difficult if they have similar behavior and audio cues. All in all, though, I think the mechanics behind it are pretty good. They get an A plus from me. Now, the Stone Imps are basically just a reskin of the normal Imp, but they have resistances. This forces you to use what some might see as an unconventional weapon mod to deal with them, which is something that I was really hoping for in this DLC, kind of like what I mentioned earlier. And this is what I'm talking about, a practical use for certain mods that may force more casual players like myself to start switching mods between engagements. Now, I think the Armored Baron feels like a second Marauder, in that it requires you to focus in on them so you can create an opening, finding a bit of calm in the chaos so you can land the shot to knock their armor off. I think he's a cool alternative to dealing with a Baron, and honestly, the design here is one of my favorites from the DLC. So, if you are going to give us a new demon for battle mode, I would not be opposed to this big metal badass motherfucker. Now, it seems it would be difficult to speak on the DLC if I don't at least mention the controversy. The difficulty of the DLC. And that controversy being that some felt the difficulty wasn't on par with Tag 1, which almost certainly kicked my ass on the first playthrough on Nightmare. Now, Hugo addressed this, and I feel I don't need to go too in depth on it, so let me break it down from my perspective. I am, for the most part, a casual player. I still play on Nightmare, but not to the point to where I can play these levels without dying, right? And I started the DLC on Ultraviolence, and sure, I found some areas that weren't too difficult, but then when I played it on Nightmare, I found that there was more than enough challenge for me. So to me, the bottom line is that id knows they have a wide variety of skill levels in their player base, and they wanted to ensure that the skill barrier wasn't so high as to push casual players to not play Tag 2 or purchase it if they haven't. Which, I know there's the argument of difficulties and stuff, but I feel like, I don't know, it's just kind of hard to explain, I guess. Maybe if, you know, putting too many demons in, which there were a lot of demons in each arena, is not what they were trying to do, I guess, then maybe what they could have done is maybe gave us a little bit more of a variety in the arenas themselves, maybe make them a little bit more claustrophobic or something. But then again, I guess that still doesn't really, I mean, that would help with the difficulty, but I don't know how that would translate to newer and casual players, so I'm not quite sure on that one just yet. So personally, I thought it was fine, and honestly, I was just happy to start slaying again. So let's talk about escalation encounters. I love the idea of bringing back gore nests, you know, in a way. These were honestly one of the best challenges in the DLC, but I wish there were more of an incentive to do the second encounter after the first time you do it. I obviously did it for the cosmetic, but knowing that the second doesn't add anything in repeat runs, I can just ignore it, unless I'm feeling like I want another fight. As for the environments, though, I found the levels themselves to be breathtaking. Both the World Spear and Reclaimed Earth were definitely my top two. I mean, I don't think a lot of us were expecting so much color in our Doom game, but I enjoyed it. And maybe Imora was a bit too dark for me, but hey, it's hell, am I right? And for the most part, the encounters were pretty solid. I only had a couple of areas where I was a bit confused about where I was allowed to move around to, but that was on me. And, you know, I was pretty rusty going into the DLC, so when a bunch of demons started spawning in, I figured why try to see what my options are. I wasn't really thinking, I was really thinking more about killing them, so. And I know, after all of those arena videos, you would think that I would learn something from those, but I clearly haven't. I also really enjoyed the platforming sections that required the meat hook. It was a breath of fresh air from those crazy time sections in the blood swamps. And they also added a sweet new element to the combat sections that included them. And honestly, I wish there were more of these sections. Now, I suppose I should mention the hammer. I think it was a cool addition and mechanically it was fine. Gaining additional resources is always a plus for me, and if it gives me some extra time to shell out damage on Marauders and Armored Barons, I'll take it. However, it felt a bit gimmicky against the Dark Lord boss fight, and there were some instances where it is gimmicky. But to be honest, it was really fun to use, and maybe too fun, and I gotta admit, I like slamming that hammer down. Now, if I were to criticize any element to the hammer, it's that cartoony stars that appear over the demon after the fact. I get it, you want less experienced players to see that the demon is stunned and vulnerable, but it adds to that gimmicky feel. Maybe an option to shut those off, I guess? I'm just kind of spitballing here. But speaking of the boss fight, it kind of felt like a remake of the Gladiator fight, which isn't all bad, I guess, but after fighting Samurai Maker in the Holt, it felt kind of uninspired. I mean, we're talking about the Dark Lord that took your form. Why does he need a mech? Why did we need another boss fight with a counter mechanic for 5 phases? Okay, maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but we are talking about the fate of the universe, 2 fierce warriors squaring off. Now, obviously, there are some differences, but I couldn't help but compare him to the Gladiator, and I was just hoping for something a bit more unique for this fateful battle. And if I were to nitpick anything else about the boss fight, there were some weird things that I noticed. Like, obviously, like, the counter mechanic is fine, but if that the only way to deal damage to him is when he's in that stunned state, that's kind of, it just makes it a little too repetitive, I would say. And also, I found it weird that, like, I get he steals some of your health if he hits you with his sword or any of his attacks. That's fair. That's fine. I like that aspect of it. What I didn't like necessarily is that if I would, accidentally shoot him when he goes to hit me with his sword, and it's not the time to counter him, he would steal health from me in that situation as well. So I'm not sure if that's supposed to happen, or maybe if it's a bug or something. I just think that it's odd that if I'm dealing damage to him outside of that window of opportunity, that he's still taking health from me. But that's just kind of something I've noticed, and I thought I should at least mention it before I got too far. Now, overall, I think the DLC was fine. It was still fun to play, but I feel like there were some missed opportunities. But I'm not going to dog on the DLC too much. Could it have been better? Absolutely. Was it still fun to play? Abso-fucking-lutely. Honestly, it was a good time to get back into the game and slay some demons. But if you ever hear this, please, just give me a reason to use that destroyer blade. That's all I ask, bro. And it's honestly that I just don't use it. I just like the idea of having a specified use for things so that I feel like I have to use it. I could use it for fun all I want, but like, just give me like a dedicated reason so I can actually find a way to fit it into my playstyle a little bit more. But anyways, these are my thoughts on the DLC, and honestly, I'm going to play it a few more times. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm looking forward to hearing your opinion. Currently, I am playing through the entire game and DLC on Twitch, so be sure to give me a follow at al_pal751. And there it is, my shameless plug, so just do it, bro. This has been Al Pal. Be safe, be kind, spread the love. We'll see you next time. Peace.